introduction to one of my favorite people on earth, Mr. Stephen Oliver, who is with the Advisor Marketing Podcast. Now, Stephen is a true maverick, and I mean that in every sense of the word. Not only in our business, but I have to tell you, his clients universally love him, and they grow at rates that they wouldn't believe it's possible. Now, on this podcast, in each episode, Stephen is joined by various members of his team or special guests to share insider secrets to rapid growth and high net profits in your financial advisory practice. So I just want you to know you're in for a wild ride, new information, and a lot of exciting new future because of Stephen Oliver. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Millionaire Smarts, and this is your host, Lee Milteer. We are in for a great interview today with the one and only Stephen Oliver, who I have known for many, many years, and I met at one of Dan Kennedy's events, and frankly, we immediately clicked and we got each other, so we are both of the same mindset, and we're very action-oriented. Now, I'm going to give you a very short taste of his massive experience and his bio and why you should be paying attention to his advice. Now, Stephen isn't your normal entrepreneur who just, sort of just started into it. I mean, Stephen has a deep background in education. He is a deep diver of knowledge. And he attended Georgetown University, earning an honor degree in international economics. And he expected to head on to Harvard and get an MBA and then on to Wall Street. But, life doesn't work like that sometimes. Life has a different direction for you. And he worked his way through college running a martial arts school for a multi-million-dollar organization there in Washington, D.C., while he was also training to be a professional kickboxer. Now, along the way, his best laid plans were derailed, and instead of going directly to graduate school, he ended up opening 6 martial arts schools in Denver, Colorado. He grew to over 2,500 active students and nearly 50 staff members before he was 26 years old. This is very impressive. Now, along the way, he did complete his executive MBA while becoming a national event promoter and an international recognized marketing expert in that field. Now, Stephen has served on the board of directors on a financial company that worked in that field and for a national sanctioned organization, and became a very sought after speaker and coach in that industry. He also developed an organization of franchised martial arts schools that open locations throughout the United States, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. He's actually known worldwide. And he became the most exclusive and highly paid coach to the top 5% of martial arts schools internationally. And that was called Martial Arts Wealth Mastery. Along this journey, he ended up helping business owners ranging from law firms to international consulting organizations to wealth managers with grassroots marketing, sales, internet marketing, and organizational management systems. Now, it's very exciting. He's a leading coach in addition to the martial arts school business to some of the top financial advisors and wealth managers in North America right now. And he's an author. He's written 7 books on management and marketing. And as a speaker, he shared the stage with many actors and celebrities, people such as Dan Kennedy, Brian Tracy, Jay Abraham, and me, Tony Robbins, Chuck Norris, one of my favorite guys, and the former New York Police Commissioner, Carrot, and other wonderful people that you would know. Today, I am very honored to have him because we're going to discuss why you need to have a maverick mindset in today's world to pull away from a lot of conventional norms. Now, welcome, Stephen Oliver, who is Master Oliver. Hello. Thank you for being here.
How are you doing this morning?
I am fantastic. And how is Boulder, Colorado? Not Boulder, but Denver, Colorado.
Yeah, I'm actually at the top of the mountain in Evergreen, Colorado, at about 8,000 foot elevation. And it's been cold. We had a little blizzard, but then It's too warm here in my office and it's too cold outside, so we can't quite get it right.
Okay, so I'm reading your book, The Mile High Maverick. So I'm guessing it's because you're up so high in the elevation.
Well, that's the Mile High is. That's the, Denver's the mile high city. So the Mile High part of it is that. And actually, I was on a magazine cover in the martial arts industry, about 20 years ago. So the Mile High Maverick thing, the publisher of the magazine was trying to figure out a cool headline, and he came up with that, because I was known then, as I am known now, as always being a contrarian, I guess, compared to what the norms were.
Yes, and actually, one of the things I really admire about you is your massive desire and commitment to learning and adapting to changing environments and economies. And we are certainly in that today. And I think that it's super important that we start breaking away from a lot of the convention things. I mean, we're at a place in time that some of the old advice hasn't worked. And so the first thing in your book, which I thought was super valuable, and if you're watching on video, you'll be able to see a cover of the book, is that you talk about who people need to pay attention to, who they listen to.
Mhm.
And many of the gurus in the world fall into certain categories that the general public and many business owners are frankly very unaware of, and actually naive and taken for their money. And people need to pay serious attention to the things that give people the right to give you advice. So some of these concepts were a number of them, and you can take over, but I have a list. But the first one was never been there, never done that.
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I have been less charitable recently. I stole the term from Steve Jobs. He calls it the Bozo Explosion, and he referred to Apple. He said when he came back to Apple, his job was not so much to grow the company as it was to get rid of all the B and C players and only keep the A players. And in coaching and consulting, and when I first started doing this, back in the '80s, there weren't all that many people out running around. But when you start adding social media, YouTube, all of the stuff, suddenly everybody's an expert, right? And most of them are, they had a little bit of success doing some advertising on Facebook, or they had a little bit of success with running one business that was personality based that they run themselves. And then all of a sudden they're running around teaching other people how to do what it is they did. And, whether it's financial advisors or martial artists, most of the guys who ran their one little practice or their one little school and ran it up pretty well, usually it's just them, right? It's, you put somebody with kind of Tony Robbins personality with lots of work ethic and put them into a business and they can do really well. But then they try to teach other people to do what they do. And it's not something that's teachable. It's just their personality, right? And that's what I talk about. You're very good at this. I think I'm good at it, but it's all about the systems. If I could take somebody and mold them into the right person, plug them into a system that's going to work with consistent conversion rates, the process from a new client to a sale to an upsale is a consistent process. Well, that's what's important. That's the thing that's really useful. The other aspect of that is, so many of these people, and I see it right now in all the little industries I'm paying attention to. There's so many people who are out on social media and they're whining and complaining and they're crashing and they're burning. It's like, well, okay, if you can't survive in down markets as well as up markets, as well as crazy stuff like has been going on the last year, what good are you, right? You've got to really be able to adapt and figure it out and roll with the changes.
Well, I think that's very true. I have been, when I was really young in the business, naive and followed people who I thought knew their stuff, but really were fabulous actors
Right.
and pretenders. And it cost me a lot of money and time. And then I became very skeptical. And then I really started to do my due diligence before I ever gave anyone a check or a credit card and took their advice. And I have long stories about that, but it is something everybody needs to pay attention to. Just because people claim to be something doesn't mean that they are really there. And also, even education. I mean, Stephen, you have provable education, but I mean, people make up resumes all the time. So one of the greatest things for maverick thinking people is don't trust, verify. How about that?
Absolutely.
The next thing I wanted to talk about was let's discuss the abundance of lack of abundance right now. People are setting themselves up to fail, and I am not a compliant person, so I do not follow rules. I follow what my gut, my intuition, my knowledge, my wisdom of many years of doing this do. But people aren't doing that. So let's really talk about you can have abundance or you can have a lack of abundance, and what's the mindset?
Yeah. Well, to me, it's insane. Whether you're talking about when we did the franchising and continue to do that, or work with and coaching people, it seems like you do, I do. We get into a lot of arguments with people where we're trying to show them you can achieve great results, and they're trying to argue with you against that, right? It's
Yes.
like, well, why are you paying me to teach you how to be successful, and then you're arguing for your own failure? You're trying to justify your own failure, and what people are going to achieve is really how they view the world. And in the last year or so, with all the craziness going on, I have businesses that I work with that year over year are up 20%. And then I have friends of mine who you would have thought were the sharpest in the industry who are down 70%. And the ones who are down 70% are every bit as certain that they had no control over it, and that was what had to happen, and it's somebody else's fault, as the ones who are up 20%. And that's in the same business, in the same geography, everything else. So there's every time anything is an external, it creates opportunities as well as it creates problems, right? So, in the financial field, well, these guys had more opportunity this year than ever, but some of them were so focused on, I do lunch meetings and we go to Ruth Chris and by mistake, and that's how we get them there. And now we can't do meetings, and all of a sudden everything's dead. Well, no, if anything, people are more anxious for advice. They're more in need of it. They're more likely to seek you out than ever. On the martial arts side, well, okay, so your state government said you can't hold in-house classes. Well, okay, so what? We're getting great results from Facebook, LinkedIn, all kinds of different other sources. People want to do something. The same people who complain about that used to complain that everybody in their area does football or soccer and they don't want to do their thing. It's like, well, okay, all that stuff shut down. So isn't that like a benefit to you? Don't you think maybe you might benefit from that?
Well, what was it in the Depression? More people became millionaires than any other time. And I actually perceive that when everybody else is going in one direction, I should certainly be looking in the other.
Yeah.
So give people some tips on some things that they could do to literally shift their mindset into not going with the crowd.
Yeah.
Let me just say the negative thinking crowd.
Yeah. Well, in last year, there was some really good research. Harvard University did a study, and they looked at credit card records. And the average middle class, upper middle class person had lower credit card balances, were paying down their credit cards, had more credit available, had more disposable income than at any other time. And I cite that just because if you're just watching cable news, I don't care whether it's Fox or CNN or who it might be, and you're hearing talking heads who have no idea what they're talking about, who are reading the script that probably a 21-year-old intern put together, right? And there was a great line from what was that movie, Bombshell, about what a Fox news story was. And do you remember that one?
Yes.
Yes. But that's all the news right now is it's all about, it's got to stir you up. It's got to piss you off. It's got to get you inflamed. But when you look underneath the numbers, a lot of times, and again, using our recent example, there was lots of opportunity. There was, if I was the guy building decks, there was more disposable income and people's were searching them out. I mean, you can go through item after item after item. If I'm a financial manager, people had a lot more disposable income that they weren't spending on restaurants and traveling to Disney and so forth. So with every challenge comes, counterbalancing opportunities. And part of the abundance thinking is, look under the numbers. where are the rays of light here? Where are the opportunities? What is it I should be looking for? With the martial arts schools, what gets hit every time is the under 30-year-old male, less than college educated. Well, we know that's going to happen every time. Women tend to be more college educated. 27-year-old women in a professional career, they do better, than the men do when things like this happen. But a lot of our guys, they think that that's their audience. They think that the 18 to 29-year-old, and anytime there's a little downturn, they're just amazed that those guys got hurt. Well, they get hurt every time. It's like, no, let's maybe we could go to middle income parents of kids who aren't going to, pull something away from their kids. Maybe we go for professional women, 32, 37, college educated. They don't get hurt when things like this happen. So there's that whole range.
Yes, it fascinates me, Stephen, that people get into this lack mindset and then they just focus in on this is why I can't do this. And I believe that most people's brains are totally hijacked by the media. I'm very vocal on Facebook. I mean, I've just given up the ship. I'm just telling the truth now. What the hell? I am absolutely just saying the media is trying to destroy the economy in the United States. We won't even go into why, because that's very long talk about, but let's just face reality. Anytime that you hear things repetitively, there are hypnotic suggestions in there and you will believe them. So if you believe that we're self-fulfilling prophecies. So if we believe that our industry, that no one will give us money, inside, whether people admit it or not, they give up.
Yeah.
They just go, well, everybody's like this and poor me, and the victim jumps out. And I want to tell everybody here at Millionaire Smarts, you are not allowed to have a pity party and a victim party more than 5 minutes. And you need to talk your butt out of that right away, because we have to be the creators, the providers. And if you keep asking yourself the question, where's the money? Where's the money? Where's the money? Follow the money. You can figure it out. Look, my whole life has been built on when everybody else was, stopping doing what they did. I actually got to rise because I was aggressive about it. So let's talk about something everybody should do on a regular basis, and that is the reminder of when things are crazy, you should go back to basics.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's talk about your basics, because in your book, on page 12, actually, you have a very long list, and you'll love people if you could see this on video. I don't just read books. I underline, I write all over them, and they're very important to me. Books, I mean, I love Kindle and all that, but I really like to write on books. So talk about why people have to have maverick thinking about going back to basics.
Well, let me give you one example. So, with the martial arts schools I work with, when COVID hit, they all were whining and complaining and bitching and moaning about how bad things were and how their numbers were down one thing or another. And everyone that I looked at, the first question was, okay, how many active students did you have, let's say in February? Okay, well, how many active students do you have now? Okay, in the previous year, what was your average monthly dropout rate? Okay. Now, how many new students did you add in March, April, May, June, July? And they all thought, well, I got told I got to shut down. I lost all my students. Well, okay. But if you're losing 7% a month and you stop enrolling people for March, April, May, June, July, so for 5 months, and so now 7 times 5 months, you've lost 35%, which would have happened last year with or without COVID. And you're down how much? Okay, so you're down 35%. That's what you would expect. Why the heck did you stop enrolling people? Well, what do you mean? How could we enroll people? Well, you run advertising and they respond and they opt in or they call you, and then you get them on the phone, you do an appointment, you do it live. You can't do it live, you do it on Zoom, right? And it's interesting. They were looking at this like, oh my God, this external thing shut me down and I'm down so far. It's like, well, no, I mean, if you had taken exactly the same actions a year earlier, 2 years earlier, 3 years earlier, your numbers would have been just as bad as they are now, right? And it's always going back to, a tangent here a little bit, but when I did my MBA, it was called an executive program. Everybody had to have at least 10 years of executive experience. And what I didn't realize at the time is that meant most everybody there was a drone in the middle of HP or US West at the time, which is now CenturyLink and one thing or another. There was exactly 2 token entrepreneurs in the program, right? Plus the guy who ran the program. I mean, he was pretty entrepreneurial. But I used to ask every one of them, I said, well, what is it you do in your company to add to the bottom line or add to the top line? Said differently, Peter Drucker's comment was the purpose of every business is to create and keep a customer, right? And to me, what happens with employees and with staff is they think their job is this thing, in the financial side, they think, well, my job is to do insurance paperwork. My job is to, do the financial projections. My job is, no. Your job is to create and keep a customer, right? So how does your job relate to create and keep a customer rather than all this little technical stuff that has to happen along the way? See, that's what I think gets missed, is that they get so focused on all the technical crap that it's like, well, no, we need new customers. And the step before new customers, we need to have a meeting with a customer. Step before that is we need to get them to.
It's Lee Milteer, and I'm delighted to interrupt you today and let you know that I've been working with Stephen Oliver for 10 or 15 years now. He's a great guy. I love all the research that he does. And I just wanted to let you know that if you're enjoying the content on this podcast, then you really want to make time to visit advisorwealthmastery.com. And why should you do that? Well, because you're going to receive 2 of his great books and actually one of mine called Success is an Inside Job. You'll also get a lot of absolutely free material on growing your practice through effective marketing. So again, take the time to go to advisorwealthmastery.com.
Raise their hand, right? Step before that is we need some marketing out there to get them to raise their hand, however that might be. Oh, by the way, we need to keep them and maybe get them to spend more money with us. How do we do that? And did we take our eye off that ball, or are we focusing on create and keep a customer, right?
So let's, with this in mind, going back to basics, I years ago had a really good friend, and she loved to cook, and she loved people, and she loved to socialize. And so she got it in her head she wanted to own a restaurant. And I unsuccessfully could not, because she wasn't a client, so I couldn't push her, but I unsuccessfully could not convince her that all businesses really are sales and marketing, that you're really a sales and marketing person, which she found sales and marketing to be objectionable. And so, of course, she starts a restaurant. She put her house up and, got mortgages on the house, started the restaurant, and we all know the end of that story. She lost her house, she lost the restaurant, and she will be forever angry at the world because her dream was taken away from her. And we call those people civilians because they don't really understand that you go in business to be in business, and that and one of the things you talk about in your book so much is, which you just mentioned, is you can't spend more time on training yourself to be a good cook or a good martial artist or a good, wealth advisor. You actually have to, do all the things necessary. And that's where I think right now, people have been hijacked, that they're so convinced by the media that the governors of, the world can shut us down and that we should just submit to this. This is not maverick thinking in submitting to the BS of the external world. And the one thing I've known about life is life always changes, and that I must get ahead of the group. So when life does turn, that I'm right there on it. I've got to be on that first. So let's talk about how important people really need to get down to basics of, follow the money.
Oh, yeah. Well, you mentioned the lady who did the restaurant. I think Gerber said it best. He said, in the E-Myth that most businesses are started by a technician who one day has an entrepreneurial seizure, and they're good at baking. They're good at baking cakes, so they decide they should own a bakery. They're good at fixing cars. They just decide they should own a car repair. They're good at doing martial arts, so they decide they should own a martial arts school. And then it all goes to hell because they hadn't realized that there's HR, they need to hire and train people, they need to do taxes, they need to do marketing and do sales and one thing or another. And of course, the basics comes back to create and keep a customer, which really has not much to do with it. The financial advisors, they tend to get into that business because they really like the numbers and they like to study the market and all that stuff. Well, most of them learned enough, by 10 years ago to deal with their clientele forever, right? The martial arts guys, they eternally want to travel to China or travel to, to Brazil and learn some more stuff and roll around with the guys. It's like, well, wait a minute. Most of your students are first year. You knew enough to teach them like 20 years ago. And, 90% of your students are first 3 years. So, why is it you're doing that? Well, what it is in both cases is they're exercising their hobby rather than focusing on their business, which, it's fine. I mean, if you want to have a hobby and the hobby is kind of in parallel with your business, that's fine. Just recognize this stuff's the hobby and the business is, let's go get some prospects and let's get them through the sales cycle and let's get them signed up. And then at that point, let's figure out how to get more revenue and keep them longer and put all those pieces together. But as you know, the biggest problem, especially with staff, is they get so focused on the technical stuff that they miss, I'm having a client conversation. Maybe it could be a referral. Maybe I could figure out something else they need to buy. Maybe I could figure out a way to move them towards a renewal, whatever it might be. But they should be thinking about that in every interaction. They should be thinking about that at the beginning of the day with a blank legal pad. They should be thinking about that at the end of the day with the notes to themselves before they go to bed. That's what they should be thinking about is, how do I get more customers? How do I keep them longer? How do I make them happier? Not how do I get better at all the technical stuff and how do I exercise my hobby better?
Dan Kennedy and I always are talking about that, as we teach things, particularly mindset philosophy, that, we're always studying it. However, the most of the people who listen to us are at the lower stage and once we start teaching higher things, they get lost and wander off because we've not been teaching them the basics. Because we are interested in the higher mindset abilities. So let's talk about something I really loved in your book, which was about people's energy and their attitudes. And we have been talking about that, but under the circumstances right now, Stephen, what is the energy level people should have towards their business and their attitude towards it? Really give us some specific things that people could break some patterns that they're doing.
Well, I mean, anytime there's any little roadblocks, it has to be higher than ever, right? It has to be more optimistic than ever. It has to be more engaged than ever. And I think a lot of it is just, whether it's you or whether it's staff, sometimes we get so enmeshed in the numbers that we forget what the mission is, right? And to me, what's always empowering is the mission. And then the way you get to the mission is you put together all the numbers to piece them all together to know that you're going to get the goal or get the outcome that you're looking for, right? And, a year like this is one where if you don't sit back and refocus on the mission, what is it we're trying to accomplish? Why is it I went into this? What are we trying to do with our customers? What are we trying to accomplish with our customers? Why should they want to work with us, right? And, that's a big challenge is, I get so focused on the dollars and cents and deposits in the bank and so forth that I forget to step back and say, what am I trying to accomplish? What does this look like at the end of the day? What's my mission with my customers? What's my mission with my business? What am I looking for the outcome to be? And then go back to how do the basics fit together with that in order to accomplish my outcome?
So I know all of us business owners have a common challenge, and that's called staff and employees. And I love a quote you have in your book on page 13, as a matter of fact, and it is, "You can't teach a pig to sing. It wastes your time and irritates the pig."
To be fair, I think I stole that from Danny Cox.
Okay. Well, um, so let's talk about getting people to work for us and how this is such a crucial determining of our success. Um, I think people need to hear this right now because people are like thinking, oh, I need to get rid of people. Well, that depends.
Yeah. Preferably you're in growth mode.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think and it certainly happened over the years. It gets perhaps worse and worse and worse. But we always look at young people coming out of high school or coming out of college, the ones that tend to be where our target is on new recruiting. And then I think companies try to modify their systems and modify their approach to what they think the mindset is for those kids, right? And nowadays, there's that great book that I think I sent you, Coddling of the American Mind,
Yes.
about how screwed up and immature, college students are nowadays. But it's not a new syndrome. If you go back to Ross Perot when he built EDS years ago, his deal was he wanted Annapolis graduates, and then they brought them in. They basically put them through an EDS boot camp and had them working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week until they socialized them into their momentum. And that's like, I don't know, what, 30 years ago, right? A lot of big companies have known that if I hire from East Coast or West Coast elite colleges, I'm going to get people with a different mindset than if I hire from Oklahoma State University or from Ohio State University or something like that. And I'm more likely to get work ethic from somebody in middle America, right? And I think a lot of it is knowing who you look for. You mentioned Dan; he's always talked about, hire the person who, and I've done this a number of times. Hire the person whose family had a restaurant, who grew up used to working in that. I add to that, hire the one who's a black belt who grew up, in martial arts because they've learned a lot of discipline. I think he added that to his list. But you want to be sure you're hiring the right person, and you're not adapting your corporate system to what the problems of the world are, that you're leaving the ones that have the problems of the world out there and getting the ones that you need that are going to work for you, right? Then the second thing, and again, it's not a new phenomenon. Look at, New York law firms back in the 80s, 90s. Look at the bond traders. They have to have boot camp. You've got to have where they come in and you work them 24/7. You have things that they have to jump through. You have to have them prove themselves. And so again, a lot of times we don't do that. We start them off nice and we're trying to, get them sold on us and have them be happy. And we say, maybe if we put a pool table in and maybe we didn't. No. What we want to do is hire the right person, put them in boot camp, weed out the ones that aren't really going to be the ones we're looking for. Better to weed them out quickly, right? So, find 100 to get 10, put 10 in boot camp to get 5. Now you come out with somebody who's worthwhile, right? And then after that, it's all about making sure every one of them are focused on get and keep a customer. So make sure that they always know, what is it your role in the marketing? What is it your role in the sales process? What is your role in the client service? And how does all that all fit together, right? And it's, again, I mean, I hate people who are on just flat salaries, but a lot of times there's no choice. But if you can't have them incentivized, at least have them clear. The purpose of this business is to grow our customer base, keep them longer, and have them be more valuable. Here's how we grow them. Here's how we keep them. And here's how we make them more valuable. Here's your role in that, right?
Yes, I think the average person, and I don't think anybody on this program is average, is they have a list of responsibilities for someone they hire, and then what they do is they train them on all those technical things, but they never say when the phone rings, that's the person who is actually paying your salary. I don't think that most companies really train that if we're not making the customer, the client, or the patient happy, none of us can be in an existence. And a lot of young people are literally clueless to this reality. They see it as I'm just showing up at a place and then I leave at a certain time and I'm supposed to fulfill these checklist things. And So I just hired a new assistant, and in my ad, it said you must have some entrepreneurial background, or you grew up in a family that had an entrepreneurial background. Because my experience, Stephen, is every time I have hired, I am a true change your mind every day entrepreneur where we're going. If I hire someone from the corporate world, one, they get very upset with editing anything I do because in the middle of a sentence, I'll just capitalize an entire word and just, and they're like freaked out about that. Oh, you can't do that. That's against grammar. Well, I don't follow your rules, honey. Uh, so I don't do well. I don't even last 30 days with someone who is a corporate mindset. So it's very important that I weed out, I call it the weak, before they get there, because this is going to cause me time, energy, and frustration. So it's in my ad. So I just want to give everybody that thought. So one of that I think you call that in your book, the culture of clock watchers.
Oh yeah, yeah. The to add to what you said, I want to go back to the story about the MBA. Not one of the drones in the middle of any of these companies knew anything about what they did to add to the bottom line, what they did to add to the top line. They knew their job description and what the piece is that they were going to do. And I couldn't agree more. You hire somebody out of a huge company, unless it's a really unusual, maybe if you hire them out of Apple, but if you hire them out of a huge, especially something like a Baby Bell or AT&T or something like that, all they've been done is trained in bad habits for years. The guys back then, it was, you'd ask them what they do, and they were, going to diversity training. It's like, well, what the hell are you doing that for? And to steal from Danny Cox again, I used to listen to all of his stuff. He called a functional team as one where everybody is looking outside towards a common objective and striving for a common goal. And a dysfunctional team is where everybody's sitting around in a circle, pointing fingers at each other about how they're treating each other, right? And if you have a common enemy, or if you have enough of an empowering goal that everybody is really focused on that, you don't need all the, let's be nice to each other. You don't need all the diversity stuff. You don't need all of that, because everybody's focused on that common goal and aren't focused on how they're talking to each other and how they're treating each other. And by default, they end up working with each other pretty well. So I think that's an incredibly important point. Is the clock watchers. If somebody's used to clocking in at 9 and clocking out at 5, there's a commercial that just came out with Dolly Parton. It's instead of working 9 to 5, it's working 5 to 9. I don't know if you saw that. Pretty controversial, actually, but it's right on track with what this is. It's talking about people clocking out at 5 and then going doing what they love. Right. So they're going and building the fitness business. They're going and building whatever it might be. But if you have people like that, where they leave your office and they go do what they love, you got the wrong people, right? You got to have the people who love what it is that you're doing and love being part of your team. And that's what their long-term outcome is. And anytime you start to see that syndrome, you've screwed it up. You've got to get people who are aligned with your mission, and then you got to keep them clear on what your mission is. But I thought it was good because, again, all the studies show like 70% of people in big corporate America don't like what they're doing. And their passion is their hobby or some other thing going on, or the side project that they have. And we can't have those people because they just, they turn their brain off when they walk in the door, and they turn it back on when they leave.
So one of the consistent things in your book that I really enjoyed is about really the secrets of leadership. And you mention in several places in your book, but there's one place I really liked, and it is you can't develop winners if you are not one. And I think this is really important for us to discuss right now, because you mentioned something in the beginning of our interview today about people, the owners moaning and groaning. So I have some thoughts about this, but I'd love to hear how important this is for your business to thrive.
Oh, well, it's essential, obviously, right? I always figure out the staff is maybe I can do a really good job and get them up to about 80% of my level of productivity, right? And that's probably being optimistic. And if I'm doing anything to, Zig Ziglar used to call it, a loser's limp. if I'm doing anything to let people have excuses rather than create opportunities, then that's just going to permeate everywhere. I was having a meeting of all of our staff one time, and I had a friend there, and the guy who had bad numbers.
It's Lee Milteer, and I'm delighted to interrupt you today and let you know that I've been working with Stephen Oliver for 10 or 15 years now. He's a great guy. I love all the research that he does. And I just wanted to let you know that if you're enjoying the content on this podcast, then you really want to make time to visit advisorwealthmastery.com. And why should you do that? Well, because you're going to receive 2 of his great books and actually one of mine called Success is an Inside Job. You'll also get a lot of absolutely free material on growing your practice through effective marketing. So again, take the time to go to advisorwealthmastery.com.
On the board, we always had the board up and the numbers. We're going through analyzing it. He said, well, I know it is really hard, and one thing or another. I said, shut up. What are you doing? You're giving him better excuses to fail. What we should be doing is, here's what you need to do to get this number up. Here's what you need to do to get this number up. Here's what you need to do to get this number up. And all of those externalizations, everybody else who has numbers on the board have the same externalizations they could make. It just doesn't make any difference. We've got to hit our results, keep the focus on that. I always think that's kind of number one. If the owner ever allows themselves to have excuses for failure, or lets the staff member have an excuse, rather than a conversation about fixing and improving and the proper outcome. Yeah, Lee, you've been on enough of our coaching calls with my clients. I'm brutal about that. Just absolutely brutal. You just cannot, okay, great. Okay, you have an excuse. Excuses are like, everybody's got one. We don't want to hear your excuses. See, look, I kept the profanity out of there for you. So, fine, you have an excuse. Who cares? Throw it out the window and let's figure out what we're going to do to get going.
So one of the things I've noticed about life, and I'm sure you have too, and everyone on this call, is that people are looking for leaders to give them direction on how to think. And what I have noticed in the last few months is the leaders they've regressed to childhood fears, and they are voicing these fears to their staff. And what they don't understand is they are the boss, the owner is the big mama or the big daddy, and the staff is actually listening and saying, oh my gosh, my boss, the owner of the business, is really afraid. And they're energetically putting out this fear. They're talking fear. They're doing these things that's making the people who work for them lose confidence that they have a future, that the business will survive, that they'll be able to keep their job. And that means that the let's say employee or the 1099 or whoever is working for you, they start to emotionally detach. Their eyes are moving away from you to, well, where's my next position, my next paycheck? Because you haven't lived up to being a true leader, which is just what you said. Is like, yes, we have excuses, but the leader has to be focused on, we're going to not only survive this challenge, we're going to thrive. We're going to get ahead of our competition. That's the kind of thing that you need to be voicing to the people around you, and most important, to yourself.
Oh yeah. Well, and again, you can't ever walk in the door. I used to have, you remember Bill, I used to have a CFO, and he was the most negative guy in the world. I mean, he was fine at his job, but he was the most negative guy in the world. And I finally set him down and said, you're not allowed to talk to me within an hour of me doing a staff meeting. And you're not allowed to talk to me from 3:00 on, because I have to be in sales mode then. So, you have this day and this time and this day and this time. And that's when you can talk to me, because I knew it was never like, I'm going to come up uplifted. It's always, something we haven't done for the IRS or something, all that kind of crap. And you've got to set, your day parts and how you're going to deal with it. I know for me, anytime I have to be in sales mode, which to me is staff development mode or actual client sales, is I've got to really stage manage that for myself, right? Is, I used to have the routine of, I'm going to deal with all the things that irritate me. And then I'm going to go work out. Then I'm going to go have lunch. And then I'm going to be in sales mode, right? You've got to stage manage it so that you're not dealing with, okay, so what? Your numbers are down. You can't go in a bad mood doing a staff training fearful and have them, rise to the occasion. It just doesn't happen. They're cueing off of you for your mood, your expectation, your excitement. In our political, environment, Lee, there was this big conversation about optimism versus like reality, right? Well, do you want the leader to be optimistic or do you want the leader to be fatalistic, right?
I want optimism.
Yeah. In the United States, we had Jimmy Carter. We know how that turned out. And, in our last president, we had this, optimistic and here's everything's going to turn out well and we're going to do it. Well, that's what I want. I want optimism and here's how we're going to get it done. And here's the things that are going to happen. And, here's some possible roadblocks along the way and here's how we're going to overcome them. But if you don't have that, I've got to have it that we're going to knock out the competition and we're going to hit our numbers and here's how we're going to do. And well, if we fall a little bit short, we fall a little bit short. But if I expect for things to be difficult, well, they'll certainly manifest that.
One of my favorite sayings in life is we're self-fulfilling prophecies, and people actually fight for their limitations on a regular basis. Limitations not only for themselves, but for what's happening in the world. So in the somehow or another, it's almost like people have been trained to be victims now of the shutdowns and the restrictions versus, okay, you've put a mountain in front of me. I'm going to find a way over it, around it, under it, through it. But our job is to look for solutions, not to keep looking for excuses. And I want people to think more maverick, that you're breaking away from the world. And Stephen, you have really literally always done this. Your path was very, in the beginning, like it was going to be, you would have done fantastic in the corporate world, except for your personality would have probably clashed with
I think so.
Left on your own, you would have done fine. But with all the other impediments of people's negative behavior, that would have been quite the challenge. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the leadership things that we can do to think more maverick. And I'll just get you started. One of them is to stay off the news.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And when you were talking about you don't let a certain person talk to you, my husband, I'm still training him, please God, to not watch the news, because then he wants to tell me. And I'm like, I refuse to watch any of the news right now. I refuse to let anything tell me I cannot be successful.
Well, I cycle back a minute ago. You were talking about the associate gave me an article by that was PBS, and basically the headline was "The rich are hurting the poor during the pandemic," and I forget how it was written exactly, but it was basically class warfare and the rich are screwing the poor in the pandemic. But if you read the article, it was that credit card study that I said, but all it said was people who have higher incomes aren't spending as much money at the theater. They're not spending as much money at concerts. They're not spending as much money in restaurants. They're not spending as much money going and getting a massage or at the and that kind of activities. What they were spending money on is anything that they could do that hadn't gotten locked out. So they were spending money on home repair. They're spending money on yard work and on what do you call it? Decorating the lawn. There's a word for it, but they were spending money all kinds of places. Plus, they were building their savings up. But all of it is a matter of the way you phrase it. If I can't go out to expensive dinners, it's not that I'm screwing the wait staff, but that's the way it gets phrased, right? It gets phrased as if that there's some kind of class warfare stuff going on, and it's crazy. On the other subject, I have a friend who owns a couple of restaurants, and all of a sudden, and it's in the city of Denver, and the city of Denver was, as bad as it got in Colorado, probably not as bad as Manhattan, but pretty bad. And, right in the middle of the shutdown, they said, how's it going? He goes, oh, our net profit's way up. I said, why is your net profit way up? He goes, well, we're making a lot more money on takeout than we do on dine-in, because we don't have nearly as much staff that have to be there. We had a good list of our customers to begin with, so we can get them coming in. People still want, something that they didn't make at home. He said, actually, our net profit's up. Our revenue's down, but our net profit's up. It's working out pretty well. Well, I mean, that's the type of thing you figure out, well, what is it that I can do to adjust, to modify, to adapt? Anytime I've had like a real crisis, we found revenue streams I never thought to look for. We found different ways to get new clients. When this thing happened with the martial arts business, we do a lot of things with movie theaters. When the movie theaters shut down, it's like, well, okay, we can't do that now. What can we do? Well, okay, Facebook engagement's up 686%. We can do that. And so all of a sudden we had schools that went from like 10 leads a month to 110 leads a month from Facebook, and lost a whole bunch of other activities, but they were doing better and having better net profit, and frankly, not having to work as hard to get the same result. It's amazing if you just keep a fresh eye out and look for opportunities. There's so many opportunities out there if you look for them.
Yes, I think that's why it's so incredibly important that people are in mastermind groups and get fresh eyes from other people who are not in your industry, who are not jaded with, information that they've had put into their own brain. And also, I have coaches, you have coaches, we are coaches. So one of the things in your book about leadership is setting goals for yourself. And I've experienced with my own personal coaching clients that they literally have stopped doing that. The joke that I heard the most last year was my worst expense last year was putting money in planners. The planners that you buy, you buy the Franklin, I believe.
Yeah.
And they were really saying that I'm afraid to plan. So we can't be afraid to plan, because if we don't plan it, it doesn't happen.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and the other element of that is, if you don't have, again, I'll steal from Danny Cox. He had a great line of, why do we work hard? We don't work hard to pay bills. We work hard to have fun with the money, or else you don't have enough for either one. I thought that was a great line. If you aren't setting the goal for, whatever turns you on, you and I both like watches. If we don't have the new watch goal, I'm into fast cars. So, I've got the fast car goal, right? Not that I don't have enough of them already, but there's always the next shiny bauble. But part of it is, and what I saw happening this year is people were just happy to stay level, right? If I can just if I can just stay in business, I'll be happy. Well, no. Let's get the net going up. Let's get the expenses trimmed. Let's get everything in order. And if you thrive right now, guess what? You're going to thrive even more when the rest of this craziness is gone. But I think that's rightly is you and I are really good at, what's the thing I want? What's the next deal? Why am I going to travel? I've always been really good at making sure each of my staff members had the list. What's the house they want? What's the car? What's the watch? What's the savings goals? And then monitor everything that was going on within the business to help them hit their goals on a regular basis. And again, I mean, sometimes you end up with staff members who plateau, and it's because they don't have any more goals. They don't really have anything that they want. They haven't thought about the new house, or they haven't thought about, the college expenses for the kids or whatever it is. So if you're constantly planning and goal setting with that, you help keep them moving along as well. But it's definitely, one of those years where you need to set exciting goals, not be just, trying to dog paddle your way through.
I'm not sure if I'm afraid if I set a goal that I won't be able to reach it and I'll be disappointed in myself. And when people say that, I always laugh and say, if you're not disappointed with yourself on a regular basis, there's something wrong with you, because, we always have to be accelerating. We have to be learning. We have to be, we are the providers and the leaders of the world. And all of us who are on programs like this, I mean, this is what you were born to do. You were born to be a leader of people. If not, you would be working for someone else. Now, I know we all work for the IRS, but we won't go there. So one of the things that I really loved about your book was your section, Manage Your Time, Live Your Life. In fact, this is one of the things that I've picked out in the book. It's on page 81, about I'm going to reprint this as one of your reports. Stephen has given us permission with great generosity to print 4 of his reports on our membership site. So there you go. You got it. You basically say, during your working hours, if you're not personally interacting with your employees and your customers, then you are misusing your time. I honestly swear to God, have not read that ever in a time management book or a time management program before. And you know how many of those I've read, and I've even written one. But that is so important. Talk about that.
Well, it's absolutely amazing. Every business is customer focused, or should be, right? But it's amazing how, to me, like, martial arts school guys, after 3 o'clock, if they touch a computer, they're wasting time. And you see that all the time. There's clients in the facility. There's people who could be renewed. There's people who are thinking about dropping out. There's people who have, family members who should add on and so forth. And in the meantime, they're sitting in the office and they're staring at a computer screen and they're, searching the internet, pretending to research or one thing or another. And it's amazing how we can confuse activity with accomplishment. If again, it's create and keep a customer. If I have the opportunity to be talking to prospective customers, that's the highest possible value to my time. Or if I have the opportunity to be talking to prospective customers about a renewal or some other higher value thing, that's a high value of my time. If I'm even on the marketing side, Lee, you know this, you get the low level mastermind groups together, and what's everybody doing? Well, I'm doing my podcast. I'm posting on social media, and I'm tweeting 12 times a day. Okay, well, trackable as any of that stuff turned into life prospects that you're actually talking to. Well, I'm doing a lot to get my name out there. Okay, well, send a prospect a postcard, get them to, raise their hand, get them on the phone, close them. Let's not do all this stuff where we're pretending that we're doing something to generate that marketing activity. Yeah, as you know, I was, in all the different groups I was in with Dan were all the real high level people. But I sat in on that one of the groups with Dave D one year, and about half of them were at the level that they thought they were really setting the world on fire by posting on Facebook 5 times a day and doing a podcast. It's like, well, okay, how many new clients did you get this month? None. Okay. Well, maybe we should do something where we just go get new clients, and create a customer. So, maybe we forget all that other stuff you're doing and just go find, why don't you go knock on somebody's door and sell somebody, do something where you're creating a new client rather than pretending you're accomplishing something when you're not.
I think this is such an important point that people have amnesia about how they're spending their time. And I would urge everyone, if you haven't done it, you should really start tracking yourself. Like if you do get on social media, you put a timer on for 15 minutes, because literally an hour can go by and you're not even conscious of it. So give us how people can contact you, website, and all that good information.
Well, on the martial arts side, martialartswealth.com. On the financial advisor side, advisorwealthmastery.com. If somebody just wanted the book, I've also got a personal website up, stephenColiver.com. but I think it's up on Amazon and, you know, all that stuff as well.
Thank you, Stephen. It's
Thank
always a pleasure. And we're going to be mavericks this year. We're not going to follow the herds at all, right?
Go the opposite direction of the herd.
Absolutely. So everybody have a great month. I'll see you next month.